Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So for the past, I think two and a half weeks, I've been reading quite an interesting book. It's here. It's called The Defining Decade: Why Your 20s Matter and How to Make the Most of Them Now. Written by Meg Jay, PhD. So this was one of those books that was sitting pretty in my Kindle, and I was like, okay, what should I read now? I was looking for books to read, and I was, let's try and read this book. And surprisingly, I'm 29, so yeah, I was like, yeah, this is maybe for early 20s or what, but it was an interesting book. Yes, I'm almost done with my 20s, but it was an interesting book to read. It made me have some perspective of some decisions either I made or I know a lot of 20-somethings making right now. So this is an interesting book. So who is Dr. Meg Jay? Meg Jay, PhD, is a clinical psychologist who specializes in adult development and 20-somethings in particular. She's an assistant clinical professor at the University of Virginia and maintains a private practice in Charlottesville, Virginia. Dr. Jay earned a doctorate in clinical psychology and in gender studies from the University of California, Berkeley. So let's talk about the things I learned after reading this book, The Defining Decade. So the first thing that I learned when reading this was about identity capital. Meg says, identity capital is our collection of personal assets. So sometimes when we understand something, we are struggling. Maybe sometimes you get a job offer, but it's not the kind of job we want. It's probably not even where we want to go. Probably you've done another degree, but you're seated at home and you get something that doesn't look as big or as great an opportunity. So she says, when you're struggling with this, don't just sit down and wait. These things don't come along. You just take that opportunity, and while you're looking for that next opportunity, and that next opportunity most likely will come from what you take now. So don't just sit. Maybe you're having your own personal crisis. Don't just sit and wait, hoping and waiting for that perfect job that, yes, when I was doing my degree, this is what the kind of job I wanted. No. Don't just sit at home. Go out there, look for whatever that you can do while you're looking for that next thing. And most likely, that next thing will come from what you're doing now. So she goes on to say, so sometimes as 20-somethings, we ask ourselves, should I wait for something better? No, something better doesn't just come along. One good piece of capital is how you get to a better work. So you're doing this job, not the best job, but this kind of job that you're doing now is most likely what is going to get you next there. And Dr. Meg's advice is, take the career with the most career capital, where you'll build the most relationships, learn the most, grow the most. Not necessarily the one that will make the most money. So yes, here she addresses first, don't just sit around waiting for that perfect job. It won't come. But either way, if you have, let's say, 2 offers, you have to weigh them. Which of these 2 offers is the one that is going to have the most career growth? Maybe this one is the one that is going to help me grow. Yeah. So I think one of the examples she was giving was one of her clients. She's a psychologist. Yeah. So one of her clients was either having a job at a coffee shop or another one as, I think, an assistant. Was it an assistant or picking coffee for, I guess, a newspaper or production? But what she wanted was, I think, being in the media or something. So yes, she was like, I'm thinking of taking this opportunity at the coffee shop because I think it was paying better and it was going to be fun and she was going to meet people. But she was like, just weigh all of them down. If you go here, you're probably going to make more connections, and this is going to be a better valuable capital, identity capital, than going to a coffee shop. So yes, she talks about, don't just sit and wait, but at the same time, yeah, just take that opportunity while you wait for another one. But if you have like 2 opportunities, just weigh which one is the one that is going to give me a better identity capital. As a definition, she writes, identity capital is a collection of personal assets. It's the repertoire of individual resources that we assemble over time. These are the investments we make in ourselves, the things we do well enough or long enough that they become a part of who we are. Some identity capital goes on to a resume, such as degrees, jobs, tests, scores, and clubs. Other identity capital is more personal, such as how we speak, where we're from, how we look. Identity capital is how we build ourselves, bit over time. Most important, identity capital is what we bring to the adult marketplace. Sometimes if you have a crisis, don't just sit down, just think of what can I do that is going to increase my identity capital. Can I take this job or learn something or just do anything, but don't just sit, just build that identity capital. So another thing that Dr. Meg talks about is on the importance of weak ties. She writes, let me just read, 20-somethings we have limited ourselves to huddling together with like-minded peers. Some of us are in constant contact with few people. Those who will help us progress are those we hardly know. So she says, fine, we've been accumulating friends either from university, from high school, and these are the people we've grown up with. They are probably on the same age. But she's saying that these people, we all have the same problems. Like most of the time, even if we ask for advice, we're all in that same crisis, whether it is career advice, we probably don't have the best because we are like-minded people. We are struggling with the same things, whether it is relationships, whether it is career. We're all struggling with the same thing. But she talks about the importance of weak ties. Weak ties are those people probably who are older, people who are not used to, but these are the people who are going to most likely help you in your career growth. She says, as we look for jobs, the people we know least will be the most transformative. She advises us to build our network with weak ties instead of only spending time with your close friends. It's the people you really talk to who might lead to the formations relationships down the road, and will give you the broad exposure. So she says the people we least know, the people don't talk to. So let's try and form a network, and let's not just try to just stay with our friends. We all have the same problems. Yes, hang out with our friends, but also try and look for people outside your network. Older people who have succeeded, because most likely these are the people with the connections. These are the people who are going to give you the jobs, or these are the people who are going to have those relationships that can help you get that job. And she writes, I get it, but that doesn't change the fact that as we look for jobs or relationships or opportunities of any kind, it is the people we least know who will be the most transformative. So she talks about the people who are going to help us the most are people who are the people who we don't hang around the most with. Yeah, so these are weak ties. I even remember most of the jobs I've gotten are not from people who I rarely talk to on an everyday basis, but probably they recommended me or what, and I was able to get that opportunity. So yeah, I think this is also true. So let's try and network with other people, because these other people are the ones who are going to help us in our career growth. So another thing that I learned from the book is the importance of starting. You start right now, and what you are ultimately doing in your 20s will ultimately affect what you're doing in your 30s and whatever. Now I really think that is true. Like, what I was doing then, the jobs, they have helped me to get where I am now. So she writes, sometimes we get too bogged down with the idea of starting that we don't start. Don't overthink it, just start from any opportunity. She writes, and this client made me think of the 29-year-old female who told me, at this point in my life, if I'm going to work and pay for childcare and be away from my kids all day long, I need that work to be interesting and well paid. But I can't get that sort of job. In my 20s, I really didn't deal with what I was going to do about work. In my 30s, I had kids. We need the money and we have to work. But you wouldn't believe the jobs I can't even get. I go for jobs and people just look at me like, why haven't you done something by now? I wish someone had told me to think about my resume a long time ago. So yeah, what you're doing in our 20s is ultimately going to be affecting what happens in our 30s and whatever. So when in your 30s you have all these responsibilities of kids and whatnot, and you're wishing that maybe I could get a better paying job or what. In your 20s, when you don't have that responsibility, get these jobs. Yes, maybe they don't pay you, but they're going to be building your identity capital. So that in your 30s, when you have more responsibilities. At least you're well set up. Your resume looks nice. Something interesting that Dr. Meg says was she talked about the decisions 20-somethings make. We 20-somethings make about either marriage and having kids, and especially she also talks about living together. She was talking about in your 20s, you're thinking about, yes, we can live together. Maybe you have your partner, let's live together, and it's cheap after all. We're both paying rent. It's going to be cheaper. But in the end, she was like, okay, is it really cheaper? Because sometimes most people moving together, you don't set clear rules. Is it rules or an agreement? I think she says, what is your commitment to each other? So you find yourselves, you've moved in together, you're a partner 4 or 5 years, and then in the end, you're like, okay, are we getting married? Are we not getting married? What is the status? And you're like, okay, if we break up now, or if I move to my own house, it's okay, how are we going to split this couch? How are you going to split that table? I mean, so sometimes you think, okay, fine, it's cheaper, but in the end, you find that even the splitting cost might be just too big. And you're like, okay, we now have the same set of friends, but you don't really know, are we together? Are we getting married? Because your commitment is not aligned. So she talks, I think her advice is be clear on your commitment before you move in together. I mean, she's like, okay, fine, if you're already saying engaged, you've already done maybe a traditional wedding, it's almost official, then it's fine. But then again, if you're just, okay, let's move in together, you don't have your commitment set straight, it might be a challenge going forward. She writes, before moving in together, get clear in your commitment levels and stress test the relationship in other ways, such as travel, to make sure it's what you really want. So she was like, yeah, before you move in, just be clear, okay, fine, you're moving in, this is our commitment. Maybe if this works out for this number of months or years, then you can get married. Just be clear so that in the end, it's not like one party wants to get married, another party is still chilled. Yeah, she's like, no. And she was like, but I think the statistics she was using here for the US or whatever, she was like, in fact, because there's so much undecisiveness when people are moving in together, this leads even to more divorce rates because of the undecisiveness of people. Like, okay, let's move in together, but you're so undecided. Yeah. So she was like, yeah, I don't know if that statistics apply here, like in Tanzania or in Africa, but she was like, yeah, there's so much undecisiveness about people who move in. Yeah. And sometimes even as much as people say, let's move in so that we can see whether we are compatible and whether if we get married it will work, but sometimes she's also said that undecisiveness might also lead to divorce. And she gives a lot of research and that note about that. If you want more, you can read from the book. And then another thing that she's written that I really found interesting was she was talking about having kids and the age of kids and when you should have kids. I mean, this was like, I don't know, it felt like an older, wiser person talking to, of course she's older and she's seen it all, but this was an interesting book. She was saying, fine, when you talk to a lot of, again, I think this is an American, so she's talking about statistics in America, but she was like, yeah, most 20-somethings are not ready to settle down, they don't want to have kids, they're just chilled, they're like, no, kids are for later. But she was also saying, okay, fine. So when she was talking to a client, she's asking a client, okay, so you find like a client, maybe the client is undecisive, probably they want to do a master's, and they're like in their 28s, and they're like, okay, fine. Do you have a partner? Do you have someone you're serious with? And they're like, no, we are still maybe friends with benefits. Okay, fine. When do you want to have kids? And probably they say, maybe around when I'm 35, I want to have kids. Okay, fine. And when do you want to go to, say, law school? And then they say, and then they're like, okay, fine. So are you ready to be in law school and having kids? And they're like, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to be in law school. I have so much stress. So she wants us to have like a timeline of our life, like where you are now. At what age do you want to have kids? Okay, maybe you want to study something. Maybe you want to go to law school, do your master's. Or it's also important to have like a timeline, just a tentative one, so that you know, okay, fine, I am postponing having kids now, and I'm postponing maybe doing this master's now. Just know that things don't clash. And she was giving this interesting statistics that she was saying. I think she's saying that, 20-something we are so productive and it's easier to get kids, but when you reach 30 and towards 35, fertility starts declining. So she's saying that fertility at her 20s is at its peak, and then from when you turn 30, going towards 35, fertility starts declining, and towards 40, it also declines even more. So she was saying, okay, fine, you are postponing having kids for when you are in your 30s, but that is when fertility starts declining. And fertility starts declining, like maybe you're going to use other methods, or you're going to fertility clinics if that happens. And if that happens, it's going to be so expensive. And she was talking about like people in the US, fine. Maybe at 35 you have your first kid, or going towards 40 you're going to start having your first kid. But are you ready? At that age, you are taking care of a very young kid, and then at the same time, probably your parents also had you late. Probably your parents are in their 70s or 80s, and maybe they're in your 70s. And if they get disease or what, you have to start taking care of your parents who are a bit old, and your kids who are so young and they need you, and your parents maybe cannot even take care of your kids. And she was like, okay, fine, you have this kid when you are 35 or 40. After 18 years, they're in campus. So you have to pay that big university bill, and then your parents are even older. Now they have maybe old age sickness. Are you ready to, is this financially feasible for you? And yeah, so she was saying, yes, the media glorifies that, okay, this 40-something person had a kid. But what they don't say is so many people who are in their 40s or late 30s are going to fertility clinics. They are spending so much money. This can cause financial stress to the marriage. And yeah, they're spending so much money having kids, trying to get kids, and some of them are not successful. So this one case you're hearing of, this person was this age and she got a kid. You're not being told of the behind the scenes, if they had IVF or whatever, and it was so expensive. So she just wants us to, like, she says, okay, fine, it's not necessary to have it, but if you want to have kids, start thinking about when you want to have them. Know that fertility is going to be declining. In your 20s, fertility is at its peak, but as you go to your 30s, fertility is going to be declining. So have all this in your mind, and age of kids, when you want to educate them, when they're going to college, or if you're parents. And she's like, until I was like, okay, fine, what she's saying makes sense. Yes, if you want to have kids, just think about when you really want to have them, and just don't postpone, because yes, you might postpone, and if you have to do some fertility test or go to a fertility clinic or whatever, it might be more expensive. I don't know how valid that is here in Africa or Tanzania, but yeah, what she was talking about made sense. So guys, that's it. That's all from The Defining Decade. I feel like this book is one of those books you read, like, I don't know, I feel like you should read in your early 20s or when you're just about to finish university, so that when you're struggling with all these decisions, you have some idea of maybe this might be the right thing, or you have some clue maybe this is not the right thing to do. Yes, I feel like this is an interesting book. It has expanded actually my perspective. I mean, now I'm like, okay, maybe that decision I made there might have been good because of this and this. Yes. And thinking about it now, I'm just happy of decisions I've been making in my 20s. So yeah, that's it, guys. If you are early 20s, read this book. It's so informative. If you're struggling with something, probably you might get one or two answers to your problem. Speak to an older person. Yeah. You remember she talks about twig ties. So if you have challenges, talk to other people. People have experienced whatever you're experiencing, and they're probably going to give you better advice. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.